Hello and welcome to this week's video. My name is Anuska Taylor. So great to have you here as always. And as always, if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please do. I create weekly videos on all things voice related, specifically aimed at professionals using their speaking voice. So today I'm continuing my little mini series and we're on part 4 of why voice coaching can really help to elevate you in your career. And we've already looked at confidence, we've looked at persuasiveness through the voice, and then last week we looked at coherence. And today we're going to look at power. And this is an interesting one because it can mean lots of different things to different people. But for me, I'm really talking about this from a voice perspective specifically, and then obviously what that means as a recipient of that voice or an audience member or a listener of that voice when you hear a very powerful voice versus a very weak, quiet, limited voice. So I was sort of inspired by a book by Dr. David Hawkins called Power versus Force, because I actually think there's a lot of overlaps between that principle in the voice. And what I see a lot with people that I observe, because I can't take myself out of this job, I'm always listening, I'm always watching voices and watching people speak. And I find it really fascinating, and I learn a lot by just listening to people and watching people. And one of the things I notice, and often people aren't aware because they're so used to operating in this force, is they will try and project their voice. So they're trying to get power in their voice, but they're doing it via force. Now, I just want to say most people are completely unconscious to their voice. So they're not deliberately doing this at all. But what happens is when we try and force the voice out, whether we're conscious of this or not, is it will end up sounding strained, raspy, or croaky. Or if we are able to get our voice out, it's probably not going to be sustainable. So you might be able to get through the odd day here and there, but you will find that your voice will start to tire, or worse still, you will lose your voice completely. And often when people are in meetings and someone might say, "Can you speak up?" And then what people do is they start pushing the voice out. And we have this kind of interesting feedback loop because it all happens very, very fast. But as we speak, we hear the voice that comes out of our mouth. And then we decide in that microsecond, do I need to do something to this voice? And if we perceive it to be weak, we might then slightly push the voice out more. And I see this across the board with people, men and women. So again, this is not to beat yourself up. It's just to know that there's another way. Forcing the voice might get you through the odd meeting here or there, but it's not sustainable. And also it's really driven from a place of fear, from a place of lack, because actually your true voice is naturally powerful. So when you can connect to your true voice, you will find it will just function freely. And part of connecting to that true voice, which is a big part of my work, is understanding unconsciously what's driving your vocal habits. So if you perceive your voice to be weak, what is the payoff for me having a weak voice? Why don't I really want to be heard? And that can often be a confronting question because consciously your mind's saying, no, but I do want to be heard. I do want people to listen. But if we are perceiving weakness in our voice and we perceive we have to force the voice in any way, there's a part of us, the ego's really taken over our voice and is trying to push the voice out. So there is a deeper aspect to this. There's always a deeper aspect to this because the voice is just a reflection of your inner world. Now, the powerful way, if we were to use the voice from a power perspective, as I say, the true voice, the natural voice is powerful. The habitual voice, the one that we've learned through conditioning, through society, through culture, you can do this, you can't do this. This is going to vary from person to person. But for a lot of us, we are taught that it's not okay to have a voice. It's not okay to express ourselves fully and powerfully. And so therefore, when we are in a situation where we do have to get our voice out, we have to feel like we've got to do something and work hard and push it and squeeze it out, because actually we're not in our true power in the first place. So there's a lot that naturally allows the voice to amplify if we know how to tap into it. And I have done videos on this before, and I can link to some of those below. But just to give you a few ideas of things that will help your voice to naturally access more power without the need to force the voice, to push the voice out. So one is, first of all, the breath, driving the voice from the belly. And again, often when we are in that forcing place, forcing the voice out, we end up pushing the voice, pushing the air from the upper chest. So there's a lot of squeezing and straining because there's no real power to the voice. The voice is not being driven from that deeper, powerful place. So that's really important. And the breath is ultimately the power source of the voice. And as I say, for many people, just like the voice, actually, many people, including myself, we don't even think about our breath. And when we're in situations where we're anxious or nervous, or there's a lot of expectation on us or a lot of demands on us, we tend to breathe very shallow. And that's never going to power the voice to its fullest potential. So that's the first thing, and that's huge. So I don't want to discount these. These are all huge in their own right. Another thing is I see a lot of people speak in the back of their throat. And this is so common. And again, this comes back to not really wanting to be heard on some level, unconsciously. And so the voice is sort of sitting at the back of the throat. And then you're trying to push the voice out from the back of the throat. You are going to have to force it out because it's not going to come naturally and effortlessly and powerfully from that place. So really part of the work then is bringing the voice forward, getting it out of the throat, bringing it forward. And part of what helps you to do that is more intentional articulation at the front of your instrument, getting your lips moving more deliberately with more agility, getting the tongue more agile and moving more deliberately. And for a lot of people, including myself, we hold enormous tension in our jaw. And so the jaw is often very tight and very clenched. And again, that is going to hinder the voice. So all of these things, if you're not aware, if your jaw is clenched, your lips aren't moving, your tongue is not really doing a whole lot, you're pushing the air from your upper chest, you are going to have to force the voice out. There is no power in that voice. And then the other big one I see is pitch. And I talk about this a lot because there is so much misunderstanding from my perspective out there around pitch. And really, we want to access what is our true pitch for us. And normally it's slightly elevated to where you are. And you'll know to some extent if your pitch is in a natural place for you, because there won't be that croakiness and that raspiness. The voice will have a clarity and a freedom and a fluidity to it. So if you feel like your voice has got that kind of croaky, raspy voice, or it's sort of sitting here, the chances are your pitch is too low. Now, when I say this to people, they're always like, no, but I don't want to talk like a little girl. It doesn't mean that at all. Far from it, actually, because when you access your true pitch for you, you can modulate, you've got more freedom in your voice. It allows the voice to travel more easily, to project more easily. Low pitches don't travel very well. So again, if you're breathing very shallow, if your articulators aren't really doing a lot, and your pitch is really low, you are going to feel like you've got to push your voice out because there's no power naturally in that voice. So these are all things you can be taught. These are all things you can learn. This has got nothing to do with your accent. All accents can find clarity and power and expression. So we're not changing an accent. We're just realigning how you actually use your voice, how you perceive your voice. And then you really set yourself up to access the power that is already within your voice and indeed already within yourself. And so what are the benefits of this as a speaker? Well, for one, and this is something that people usually come and work with me for, is your voice will last longer. So you will find that you can speak for longer periods of time without fatigue. You have that power, you have that confidence, coming back to video number 1. You trust your voice to deliver because you're not waiting for the wheels to fall off your voice, because you're thinking, oh my goodness, when I get to like hour 3, I feel like I have to start pushing my voice out, or I 100% rely on a microphone to deliver. So you have a real trust in your voice, which is going to mean you're going to show up more confidently. Your voice is going to last longer. And really importantly, it's going to feel better for you, and it's going to sound better for your audience. Because when the voice is naturally powered, it has a freedom, it has an ease, and it has an authenticity, versus when we're forcing and pushing and straining and squeezing. That isn't really our authentic voice, because the reason we're having to do that is we're not really in our true alignment with ourselves or our voice. So there is an inauthenticity there to that voice. Again, this is not conscious. This is not about beating yourself up. It's just to become aware. And so the whole premise of my work is you have all of this within you. And I'm not talking about maybe the tiny minority of people that have serious pathology on their voice and their voice doesn't function. The average person that I work with who is using their voice in their business or career, there's nothing actually wrong with their voice in terms of the physicality of their voice. It's just they've never been taught how to use it. And all of this conditioning, all of these patterns that we've been told, this is how you use your voice, this isn't how you use your voice, little girls that should be seen and not heard, all of this stuff that we pick up as children then starts to have an imprint on our voice. And we take this into adulthood. So it has an impact on our voice. And we wonder then why we've got all these vocal habits that aren't actually serving us. So this is the fundamental aspect of my work, which might make what I do quite different, is I believe that every voice has access to power, to expression, to clarity, regardless of accent, regardless of where you're from in the world. You do have to put the time and the work in, because we're working now to transcend conditioning, transcend those patterns, but it's absolutely possible. It's all there, it's all within you. And so this powerful voice is within you. And if your voice isn't powerful, then you know that the conditioning is driving your voice. And in case you weren't sure, the conditioning isn't who you are. It's just the programming that we've been given. So you can absolutely transcend that. And that's a big part of what I do. So I will link below to the key videos I've mentioned here around breath, around pitch, and around the sort of forwardness in the voice, because they're really important principles. I mean, I'm simplifying this hugely because within their own right, it's quite complex, and trying to apply it in your own voice can be very challenging because you don't know what you don't know. You've been doing the same thing potentially for 20, 30, 40 plus years, but just to know it's possible. And I will put the link below if you're interested in learning more about my approach, how I work with clients, how I can help you specifically, give you some insight, give you some feedback on your voice. You can book a 30-minute call with me below, where I will give you a lot of information about your voice and also share with you how I can support you and how I can help you. So even if you choose not to work with me, you would still get enormous value from the call. So thank you so much. Next week will be the final video. And again, if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. It makes such a difference. But thank you so much, and I will see you next week.